Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Shields. Got my good buddy, Will Humphreys, back on the podcast with me. Thanks for coming back, Will.
Hey, I want a sound effect. I tell you this every time. Like last time it was like a musical intro. I want like a Will Humphreys and like applause.
Will Humphreys, applause, and like the old Tonight Show. Da, 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 da.
Yeah, I think that'd be important.
That'd be a lot of fun. Right?
Yeah, thanks for having me though. I appreciate, the invitation to be back.
Well, it's always good to have you, and you're always more than willing with your time to come back on. But we talked about this while at PPS just a couple of weeks ago, and understood that, okay, we built up PPS one or two times over the past year leading up to it. We do have to have a follow-up on PPS and what we thought about it. Let's just start there. What were your general thoughts about attending it and what you took away?
So I love the networking. When you talk to people down there, that's like the number one thing. And it's always so great to run into people and like catch up on what they're up to. And that alone, I think, is the greatest value for me, is just being around people like you and I got to hang out a few times as well. And we always run into people who are looking for answers to certain problems. And that's always a great place to be. Sometimes we can help. Sometimes we know who they can get help from, and sometimes we don't know. So It's just a lot of fun to be down there. The event itself was crazy for me because I was running a few events there and was running for office, which, didn't go very well, but that's all right. But it was still a good learning experience for sure. And overall, it was totally worth it. Yeah. Well, what do you think though? Like, what was your thoughts about it?
I'm the same way. The networking part of it is what gets me excited. I know that's one of my core things is networking, that really greater than just going to PPS. Networking in general is core of me, and so that fulfills a purpose. Hanging out with the people that I like and people that I love, and reconnecting in a way that I never would have been able to over the past year is huge, and it allows me to then be a benefit to other people, especially as I'm coaching. I can say, oh, I know an owner who has that same issue or has done that thing before. Why don't I connect you to? And that gets me fulfillment, right?
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed that. I didn't go to any of the presentations. Did you?
No.
So I didn't go to any presentations, but I know that a couple of the guys in my peer-to-peer network were really enthused about the presentations on direct-to-employer marketing. To reach out to these self-insured companies, and you can address them independently and set up contracts with them independently to see that not only their employees, not just for workers' comp situations, but also for any other health issue, including the employees and their families. And so there was quite a bit of talk about that. And I know Mike Horsfield has been kind of on that horse recently. So I'm not surprised that there were more presentations on that. Other people got some value out of that as well.
Well, that's a great concept. It's not the long-term solution, but it is a step in the right direction to start finding ways we can circumvent the current reimbursement system to get better payers and start making more money for not working as hard. Right. At the end of the day, I think that's one thing that unites all PT entrepreneurs is that everyone's getting really sick of working as hard as they are for what they're making. And there's this like discrepancy between like the employers and the employees. The employees somehow think there's more money out there. Like they're even more burned out in some cases because now they're coming out of school with $150,000 of debt and they're working, salaries haven't changed in like 15 years, but inflation's gone up, reimbursement's gone down. And like, I don't blame people for wanting to jump out of the industry when they're making $72K after $150,000 in debt. And their only hope for making a sustainable living is to go open their own practice, which even then has its own pitfalls and challenges. So it's nice to see that we're starting to find some ways to circumvent the main problem, even though it doesn't address it. It does help find some oxygen in little pockets where they can to grow.
Yeah. And I think that was also part of the disappointing thing is there weren't any groundbreaking new ideas from my perspective. That is a relatively new idea. It's there, but like you said, it's not going to change the direction of physical therapy as a whole. We'll only go so far, right?
Yeah.
Our conversations were more along the lines of things just have to change. And unfortunately, we don't have all the solutions either. We talked about in our previous episode is it's got to start with taking a stand. And we believe, and I don't want to speak for you, but based on our conversations, our discussions were along the lines of we just have to stop taking some of these lower paying insurances. Even if there's a reason why they might be justifiable financially, I think in a larger scope, it's a detriment to the profession. And dropping it isn't necessarily going to hurt you. There are ways to improve your bottom line, frankly, by dropping those insurances. It's pretty obvious that something like that needs to be said, even though I don't think the APTA, do they have the guts or can they, without incurring some kind of wrath from someone somewhere, to say that. I think what I took away from it, and that was our discussion towards the end there.
I mean, that alone would shift the power. Kind of to your point too, it's like that's the right what. The mindset around it is what makes me concerned, because I know there's a lot of willing and wanting PT owners out there to make a difference and change. But when you start asking them to drop their lowest paying insurance, that's where the rubber meets the road. How committed are they to greater change? Like you were telling me, there was even someone out there saying, yeah, you want to take all those low paying insurance because why not, to fill your available slots or whatever bull crap that's out there. But like until, and we have to change our mindset first to some degree. And maybe that's the kind of thing where having a rallying cry around drop your lowest paying insurance maybe is what wakes people up. And like maybe if we're like, guys, you've got to drop your lowest paying insurance, because you and I both know people who've had the courage to drop their lowest paying insurance. And guess what happens to their whole life? Their margins improve. They're not working as hard. Go figure. But there's all these fears, right? This fear-bound industry of ours of, I'm afraid of losing a doctor referral because if I stop taking United Healthcare and they're used to giving me everything, maybe they'll stop giving me everything because I don't take the crappy insurance. And again, I don't know, like you said about the laws, and there's all this like debate on the APTA, which is why I ran for office. I didn't want to formulate an opinion based on what other people told me. I wanted to work in some sort of like service-based capacity with leadership to get my own opinion about it before I complain about it.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I still can't do that. So I don't even have an opinion on that piece, other than to say that if it is what we have for now, at least it's a good central place to meet. And then like ultimately, we have to be a lot more aggressive. I think that's the big thing that you and I were talking about, that when I got on the plane, I was thinking, I'm like, we have to get more aggressive. And I don't know if it means we got to start getting angry or just like, if we could turn all that fear into action, if we could turn all that fear into anger or whatever emotion suits people to actually take a stand in a way that like means something, dropping the lowest paying insurance, I think that's when we would see results, especially if we organized in a way to where a lot of us were in discussion of doing it together. Like what if, this is where I don't know about collusion laws, but like what if there was a group out of Arizona that did that together? I don't know.
Yeah. It makes me think, as you're talking, I'm not meaning to get political, but I think it exemplifies the point. And that is, I think one of the reasons you get like a Donald Trump personality.
I knew it was going there. I knew
honestly,
it was going to Trump.
Because like you're talking about with anger, I think there's people who said, okay, we tried with John McCain and Mitt Romney, who are nice guys, and we're not getting through. Let's try something else. And and the pendulum swung the other way. Right. And not that that's necessarily good or bad, but something like that has to happen. Could it have happened with a different personality type?
Yeah,
maybe. Right. But things are going kind of status quo. Medicare has come out. They're going to drop their rates 5%. And if you look back over the past 5 years, it's dropped almost 10% total. It's going the wrong way considering inflation. Right. So something has to change. And those same people who have dropped their insurances that we know mutually, lives have gotten better. I haven't met someone who's dropped a low paying insurance yet that has seriously regretted it.
Yeah. Or at all. Like every time they're like scared and it went great. And I'm such a dork for not doing it. And they end up running way better practices because they changed their mindset on it. Yeah.
And that's an important thing is the people who have done it, they have their mindsets are different. And sometimes it's a step in faith, but it's believing that, number one, we are more valuable. We do deserve more. have that conversation and talk yourself into that. And if you do, that's fine, but do it and recognize that that's where you are. And sometimes those words give you power, especially as you express them more. And then dropping them, sometimes that can be difficult. You have to come up with a letter, but you also have to come up with a plan. What are you going to tell your patients? What are you going to tell your doctors?
Yeah.
And that's where the fear stops people, right? I don't know what the doctors are going to do, so I just won't do that. Well, okay, let's face that fear. And once they face that fear and have the conversations with the doctors, typically 90% of them are going to say, I totally understand. But we're going to provide great services still, and we're still here. It's just that 5 to 10% of our patient load isn't going to be seen anymore. And that's usually what it is. When you're talking about your lowest payers, it's not 30% of your business.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be. I do have a friend it was 30% of his business, and he still did it. And things went great. Right? Because he shifted the mindset, and it took him some time. I was trying to talk him into dropping this insurance for a year and a half before he finally did. But he finally shifted the mindset. Things got painful enough that he needed to shift the mindset. But he figured out what the conversation was going to be with his doctors and with his patients, made the change, and things turned around for the better within 6 weeks.
Crazy.
Yeah, right? It's a simple process if we just simply take the time to address the fears that are stopping us, that are limiting us, right?
Yeah. And I think to your point too, it would really be useful. This might be a fun theme for us to talk about in future podcasts, but like to bring on somebody who's done it and just talk to them with the three of us about like that. I'm sure you have actually. Have you done episodes like that?
Have I done it with someone that's done it recently? Probably not. I've talked to Sturdy McKee about it on the episode. I have a few friends that in mind, especially my friend in Las Vegas, who I think will more than likely do it, right? Steve could definitely talk about the numbers. I had another client in Tennessee. It was a big headache for him to drop United Healthcare specifically.
Yeah. Because
he couldn't find the right person to give the termination letter to.
Oh, you can't fire us if you can't find us.
Yeah, exactly. He got sent to like 4 or 5 different people. And he's like, okay, I'm just going to start giving it to everybody, but let it be known.
Yeah, that reminds me of Ryan Hamilton's bit on quitting his gym. Like he has to quit a gym. He's trying to get rid of the gym membership. And then he's like, okay, well, if you want to quit, you either need to come down or you need to mail a letter. And he's like, no, this is me telling you, you just quit. But you had to go through this process of writing a letter, and it's hysterical. Ryan Hamilton, you got to check it out. But that makes sense that the insurance, because that's how insurance companies operate, right? With my billing company, it's hysterical. Mm-hmm. With certain companies, we will send out the claim, and the next day immediately send out the corrected claim with all the exact information on it, because we already know whatever insurance is going to deny it, saying that it was missing X, Y, and Z 100% of the time. If PT owners knew how they're getting manipulated, I was going to use a different word that was a lot more graphic.
Screwed is appropriate.
Yeah, screwed. Thank you. Screwed. That was a lot nicer than what I was going to say. If they knew how they were being messed with, because PTs operate usually from such a clean, integrity place. They're trying to do what's right by everybody.
Everything's ethical.
Yeah. And they end up ruining their whole lives trying to be everything to everyone. But the insurance companies are taking advantage of that, and they're laughing. I'm not saying the person you call, but somewhere at the administrative level, they're like, well, they're willing to take it, so we might as well keep doing it to them, because they don't even say anything about it, except for this one guy out of Tennessee or this one guy out of Las Vegas who are, when everyone starts doing it and we all start banding together like the orthopedic surgeons, they're going to stop laughing and start going, well, crap, how are we going to solve this problem? I guess we're going to have to reimburse higher.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's funny because he got sent to 4 or 5 different people at United Healthcare and found out he shouldn't be going through United Healthcare. He has to go to Optum. And so now he finally found the person in Optum. Found the person at Optum, gave him the 90-day notice, the original 90-day notice. He didn't change the dates, but on day 89, they finally called him and said, hey, this is the deal. We'd be willing to actually pay you this much. I think they raised $15 a visit. Yeah. And he's like, I took it because I'm just going to see what happens. And it's going to be, and he actually dropped. So there were like 4 different United Healthcare plans that you can actually drop. He's sharing this with me, and this might be regional to Tennessee, Florida, whatever, but there's like United Healthcare Medicaid, United Healthcare Commercial and Medicare is one department, United Healthcare Workers' Comp, and United Healthcare VA.
Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, I keep VA because they actually paid all right. I'll drop Medicaid, and the workers' comp paid all right. And then the commercial, they actually bumped up like $15 a visit, right? And he said, I'll take it. But the fact that he did it, you could tell it gave him a little bit of confidence. And he's like, I'm going to see how this goes. If it gets better, if they don't give me a hard time, then maybe I'll keep them, maybe not. But I can also drop them now because I know how to do it. And that makes things a little bit easier. And giving that kind of power back to the owner, it's infectious, right?
It's inspiring.
Inspiring. They gain more confidence in themselves as an owner. Like, hey, I'm doing what's best for the business. Why didn't I do this 10 years ago? I'm going to do more of it now. And that can be really helpful. That's why maybe it's the solution, maybe it's not, but it's at least a stand, and it gives some power back to the owners.
You and I were talking about this right before this call, this concept of purpose and power. When we are on purpose, but we're not getting enough power, which directly relates to influence, i.e. profitability, like profitability, possibility. That's what's powerful about money is that when it's taken in the right way to the right leader, it unlocks possibility to create more good for others as well as their own family and self, right? And so when we talk about PT owners, man, what a wonderfully purpose-driven group that couldn't want to sell their businesses faster. Like, it is funny. I did a masterclass, as you know, at PPS called How to Sell Your Practice for 2 to 3 times the national average. And I have to be mindful who goes into that dinner, because there's a large percentage of PT owners who are just so burned out. They're like, just take this thing off my hands. I want more money for it, even though all these things. And it's because they haven't had enough power. They haven't been empowered in their day-to-day career of owning a practice long enough to be able to feel like they can really make a difference without sacrificing time from home. So, like, to your point, every decision we make that increases profitability increases power and helps us enjoy the purpose-driven work that we do. Mm-hmm. So this guy, I can see where just sticking it to the man, like that's a common phrase, but like in this case, there couldn't be something more true. There's nothing more suppressive on this earth than insurance companies. Come on. Like, their whole point is to do as little as they can as possible without looking like jerks. When we allow them to take advantage of us, and it's such a big, complicated system, it's hard to even point your finger. Well, maybe that's to your point, going back to your initial thought. What if the thought was just drop your lowest paying insurance? We're not singling one insurance company out, but as an industry, we're reclaiming our power back by saying we're not going to take it anymore. And Nathan, these guys and girls are owning practices who are listening to this podcast right now. They don't even know that they're afraid of the wrong thing. What are they afraid of? They're afraid of everything that I used to be afraid of as well. It's like, I'm afraid of being exposed for who I really am. I don't really know what I'm doing as a business owner. I'm afraid of like getting sued by a patient. All these like things that are legitimate threats, but they're individually not that hard if you're just being ethical and you have insurance and you do the best that you can, right? Like, they're worried about like getting home in time to see their kids play sports, or like, this is the big one I hear in coaching is like, they're afraid they're never going to have enough time to like exercise and take care of themselves. They're afraid of the wrong things. They should be afraid of the fact that where the industry is going right now in 10 years, this thing that they've killed themselves to build isn't going to even be an option. Mm-hmm. If this keeps going the route that we're in 10 years, mid-2030s, there will not be physical therapy private practices that are standalone mom and pops that can succeed that aren't cash-based. Mm-hmm. So going to Danny Mattei, like, he's totally going that route the right way, but it's not going to solve the problem. I talk to those guys all the time. They're super on purpose. They're super profitable. So they're super powerful, and it's not going to pivot the industry. It will help. We have to get a full-rounded solution around this. And if we were just afraid of the right things, and if we thought just for a hot minute that we are leaders and we can say no to these insurance companies and reclaim that money, that there is a way to solve this on a micro level. And then if enough of us solve that, then we can start shifting things on a macro. Mm-hmm. Right? So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, this being of purpose and power and how money is about power. And again, PTs are kind of messed up. We're all typically screwed up about how we think about money as an industry.
Well, maybe it starts back in PT schools, right? Because if your focus is on profit, then you are evil, right? In some way, and it plays into our personalities, because as a collective, we are compassionate givers. We want to help. We want to be people pleasers mostly, and so we want to give out of the altruistic nature of ourselves. And hopefully we get rewarded because of it. But we're not going to claim our treasures on the backs of people who are hurting type of attitude. And we shoot ourselves in the foot, because these companies that we're quote unquote working with are collecting $1 billion profits on a monthly basis. United Healthcare supposedly just put out their financials, and yeah, they made a 1.2 something billion dollars in the last quarter. And in the first quarter of 2022, supposedly they made 24 billion in 2021. So yeah, they're doing pretty well on the back of our caring natures.
Yeah. And we just keep taking it, but we don't even realize that we're taking it. What we think we're doing is surviving, because we're so busy from day to day that all we can work in is a podcast like this on the way to work or coming home. That's as much as we can do. And so it's not a judgment on that busy entrepreneur who fights the fight every day. They're really the heroes. The problem isn't that they're not heroes. The problem is that they don't think they are. That's the problem, is they don't think they are as they're driving to work. They think it's selfish to say, I'm a leader, I'm a hero, I can change things for the better, I can stick it to the man by rejecting my lowest insurance. And in so doing, they invalidate all of I've heard this from others, I think it's selfish for them to not recognize that they're heroes in their own universes.
Right.
Because if they deny their own power, they're denying all of the parents, teachers, family members who supported them, loved them, helped them become who they are. And when they say, I am strong enough to make a stance here, I have done the unthinkable, which is open a low margin business that rides on my back as an owner, then maybe I can do even more. Then they honor those people as they get their profit line up. So yeah, those teachers, it starts in the school system. It's insane. We've had our profession led by educators. And by the way, I love educators. They are essential to this whole journey. And without the right balance of education and entrepreneurship, where are we? Well, we have this wonderful standard of doctorate level, which I think is valuable and important, that is raising the debt to our students $150,000 a head, who are now leaving the industry in droves. And we're going to get to a point where there won't be people to hire, right? Because no one with a decent head on their shoulders is going to continue in this profession. So if we as entrepreneurs can just take stands for our practice, every time every one of your listeners drop their lowest paying insurance, they're not just improving their, never mind more profitability for their business, more time with their family, less headaches dealing with crazy employees. Every time they do that, they're improving the profession. Like every time they do that, like the most selfish thing that we can do is to take these low paying insurances. That is selfish. And it's so sad. I'm not any better than a $65 visit. I'm not any better than that. None of my team members, none of the impact of the thousands of people I've helped in the past. I am less than anything else. Every single time we say no, we're standing up for ourselves and all the other PTs in private practice, right?
It's almost like we as a profession have daddy issues.
Yes. We're all halfway to the pole. I'm just kidding. I don't know what that means. Like as soon as I say that on your podcast, I'm like, man, that's out there forever. My kids are going to be like, Daddy, what does that mean? And I'll have to show them.
Yeah. And I'm not going to go back and bleep it out.
No, so I think you should highlight it. That should be on the intro to this video.
Right.
Should be that comment. They'd be like, what?
All I ask is that you just say earmuffs, Will, when you're going to go there. So,
yeah, I will.
So those people who are driving in their cars and have kids in the car, they know. Earmuffs, kids.
Earmuffs.
Uncle Will's about to say something.
Oh, jeez. But it's true. Daddy issues. I love how you say that. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, totally, man. Now you're doing something, this podcast, we're recording it in November. It's going to come out toward middle to end of November.
Yeah.
Aren't you doing something this week about Save the Profession?
Yeah, I'm so glad you reminded me. I was going to bring it up.
Tell me what you're doing so that people, this is going to be post facto. How can they get in touch with you post facto if they wanted to hear what you're doing?
Well, the whole thing is that we're doing this group meeting. What I'm doing is a start, stop, keep discussion with whoever shows up. I don't know who's going to show up. I've had a handful of people say they'll be there. Let's see if they actually have the time and the courage to show up.
Right.
Because all we're doing is a town hall meeting as a profession. I have zero interest of trying to make this into a lead generation for one of my companies. My companies are busy enough. I don't need more business. What I need is the industry to survive so my businesses can actually do something in 20 years.
Yeah.
That's what I need. So I'm inviting all leaders to be there. I hope you'll be there if you can.
Sure.
And we're just going to do a start, stop, keep, which we start doing as a profession, stop doing as a profession, and keep doing as a profession. And I just want to see who has the cojones to show up and have this discussion together so we can see who the leaders are. Obviously, network is going to be vital to the net worth of this industry. And again, I don't think us meeting isn't an invalidation to the other efforts. I had a chance to get to meet the PPS leaders. And although I don't know them very well, I was super impressed by the quality of leadership in those men and women. As you know, I no-showed my speech at PPS, which is a big part, I'm thinking, as to why I didn't win. Look how arrogant I am. I honestly thought that if I showed up for sure, I was going to win. Isn't that funny?
All I had to do was just show up.
Well, I just give a crap in a way that I don't think most people do. And I think it shows. And I'm confident that if I had done it, but I had this health thing that night before that was insane. And I've never missed anything like that. And I basically ghosted them. And the way they were so generous on the back end of that, I just remember thinking, no, we've got some great leadership here. And us meeting is just about adding additional support to that.
Right.
If you're a critic of that or if you're a supporter of that, doesn't even matter. Let's just get together and start having this discussion more frequently, because it's going to take a village to turn this thing around. And I don't know, I'm just not willing to let it go after 20 years in this thing. I'm just not. I hit 20 years being a physical therapist in September, by the way.
Oh.
And so for me, it's I'm 20 years, 24, right? Undergraduate studies, all that crap. So many decades of our lives into this industry that we know changes people's lives. Doctors save lives. We change lives.
Right.
Surgeons save, ER surgeons save the life. We change the life on every level, right? A good therapist has the patient leaving saying, I had as much emotional therapy as I did physical therapy today, because that's what we do. And I want to get together in a room of people like you. You and I honestly think we solved how to save the profession that day at PPS before you left for the airport, or before I left for the airport and you went to go see your son. You and I broke down all the things that would need to happen and stuff. I'm well, that's not hard to see. It's going to be heavy lifting. It's going to take a lot of people to do it.
Yeah. A big part of it is that we are independently owned. That means you have to change the minds of tens of thousands of people instead of just changing a few minds, right?
Yeah, man. Seriously. And there's a lot of really cool people who have that mindset, but there's nowhere for them to go. So that's what I'm doing. I created this thing on Thursday. It's the PT Town Hall. It's 4 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Mountain Standard, and wherever else. So I just am inviting everyone who gives a crap to show up. And even if you don't say anything and you just sit back and listen, being there physically, or virtually, I should say, is the same thing as taking a stand. It's always the little stance that we take that makes the biggest impact. It's not these big, I would say this, before we drop the insurances, if that's hard for people to do because they're listening to this, how am I going to do that? Just show up to the town hall. Right. Show up to that. Listen to this podcast continually. Keep listening to these episodes, because every time you have a guest on that helps empower people with knowledge, they are getting a sense of power that will help them get the real power of that profitability later.
Right.
So these little things they're doing are not little. So if all they can have time for is a podcast on their way to work or home, that's still taking a stance. Just be committed to doing more later. Period.
Yeah, exactly. Now, this is going to be, November 17th that you're doing?
What is Thursday, the 17th?
I think it's the 17th. Are you recorded? Is that something that you're going to share?
So, I'm going to throw it up on my YouTube channel. I'm going to throw that there. So if you want to catch that, go to the Healthcare Business Academy on YouTube. That's my channel where I teach, business lessons and that kind of stuff around that. So, I'll be putting the information on there.
Okay. So it's going to be on your YouTube channel. Do you think you're going to have more town halls going forward, or
My
are you going to kind of get a sense of where things are initially before you?
So I'm wanting to do it month. The vision would be that we like have this like kumbaya and like a rallying cry, and like there's leaders with good ideas, and there's tears, and someone says, I didn't know I felt this way, and then we go, let's do this every month. And I thought that would be really cool, but I don't know. Like, I'm just kind of keeping I'm not like, the calendar isn't repeating yet, because I just want to see who's going to show up and what are they going to say. And let's go to there. Let's just go to that point and then figure it out from that point on.
Yeah, definitely see what kind of grassroots efforts can be made, right?
For sure.
And there's a possibility there. You and I, back in the day, we dealt with Ash coming into Arizona and wanting to represent Cigna, right?
Yeah.
That was like 15 years ago. And I know Sean Miller said Ash just came into Utah in this past year trying to do the same thing. And he simply him being there he was able to share with the other PT owners, hey, FYI, this is what happened in Arizona. We don't want to do this, and made significant changes. And so grassroots efforts in that regard made a big difference within the state of Arizona and the state of Utah regarding one particular effort. So that's the beauty of it. Starting here this month could be something of a grassroots effort that can make a significant change. Yeah.
When you say that, it makes me realize the bad situation we're in, the bad news about where we are is that there's only 23,000 physical therapy owners in the country, right? That's a big enough number to like have to influence, but not big enough to where it has major potential. But the good news is that there's only 23,000. Like, we could realistically influence the majority of those owners because it's such a small group.
Right.
And in a way that we're going to change healthcare policy as it pertains to private practice, we just need a controlling majority of those private practices to be united in what they do. I got people on my line saying that we should unionize and all these different things. Like, I'm not even close to like that side of things. Let's just all have one conversation and create the time on our calendars just to do that. And then we can figure out everything else.
We'll talk about the other things later, right?
Yeah. I don't have, like you and I have ideas, but like the path I think will be crazy easy and walkable if we can just get everyone on the same step.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know you're limited in time, but I wanted to thank you for joining us today. Anything else that came from PPS that was just like, oh, this little tidbit, or anything else like that? I
do believe that there's more we could do with our industry in terms of these types of conferences. Greg Todd, for example, has one every May, and I love that. We just need more stuff like that, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Like, it was so useful just to get people in the room. Like, the content is secondary to me, even though that was very useful for a lot of people. But like, that was the big walkaway. It's like, yeah, we've got this. CSM doesn't really count at all for what this is. And then there's a couple of companies out there that run some stuff. I did my first, in-person leadership summit in August. So like, there's different things that are bubbling up. We just need more people stepping up and like creating space for people to have talks and discuss this very thing. Yeah, I think WebPT, from what I hear, their conference is pretty good at Ascend. And Graham Sessions supposedly has some. I haven't been to these, so I can't say. But hopefully they're having these kind of discussions and getting a little bit deeper into the weeds. So I had one of our coaches, a guy named Chris Smith. He was the keynote speaker at Ascend. He loved Ascend. He thought it was a great event. And you know what he told me? He said, this is a guy who speaks in various industries across the country. That's his main thing. He's a public speaker. He was the keynote speaker at Ascend. He said, Will, I've never seen a more asleep group of people in my life. I have never spoken to an audience who seems so unattached to like wanting to do the big things that are going to move the industry forward based off of how they responded, not just when I spoke, but afterwards in the individuals who came up to me. He goes, that is incredibly disappointing, but also exciting, because if you're going to disrupt a space, if you're going to change it, all it takes, it doesn't take as much energy for someone to step up and be loud, because everyone else is being so quiet because they're hypnotized by the beat of their own pencil hitting their pen, hitting their paper for documenting their notes, right? Right. So it's exciting. When you mentioned that, I thought I'd share it because it kind of relates to this. So anyway, definitely love. I love Ascend. Heidi is great. All that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, gotcha. And my takeaway was, man, you guys are doing great things at Multiple Exit, helping owners sell their practices and coaching them up to get more value and ultimately
a greater sale price when they do go to sell. You guys are doing a great job there between you and Scott and Michelle. Any other, so you talked about Healthcare Business Academy on your YouTube channel. Remind everyone else what other offers you're providing, the many things that you're doing really quickly.
Well, there's a few things going on right now, but the one I really want to promote is multiple exit. We have had unbelievable success in helping our clients starting to realize that the true value of their life's work. So if anyone listening just is even contemplating exiting their practice by selling it in the next 10 years, to reach out to me, and what we can do is do an absolutely free assessment of the valuation of their company. We can do an assessment to give them a sense of what it's worth and what it could be worth. And that gives us a chance to kind of show you a little bit about what we do. But we've had a very loyal group of clients in that company now for almost 2 years. And we are in a very excited place to be able to continue to grow that. So yeah, if anyone listening is like, yeah, I want to exit the next 10 years and you don't know what that looks like, give me a call.
Awesome.
If you want to do an intro, have them reach out to you and then just have them send.
Okay. So they need to reach out to me, Nathan@ptoclub.com. You can find me on the Physical Therapy Owners Club Facebook group or LinkedIn. You can connect with me any of those ways. I'd be happy to make the introduction to Will.
Yeah, and if you do reach out to me directly, just make sure you let them know that you heard me on Nathan's podcast, please.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, bro.
Thank you, man.
Great catching up.